People are fascinated with horror films, especially ones based on true accounts. And I think the reason is because it suggests a real evil, and that's something that most people won't fundamentally buy into. Yet, when these films are made, it forces them to question those fundamentals, and that in itself is the scariest thing. Although its story is not a true account, one such film that blurs the line of fact and fiction really well is the second most profitable film in history, well, dollar for dollar, Paranormal Activity. The film was made for a mere $15,000 and on opening weekend alone made $19.6 million. And I want to spend the rest of this video answering two questions: how and why. First of all, let's talk about how this film was made and how those factors contributed to its success. The biggest factor of a successful film is going to be the budget and its earned profit. Now, really, you can have two ways of handling it. Either you make a huge blockbuster with a very, very high budget, and hopefully the earnings from that, the profit of that, would substantially be higher than your budget that you spent on making the film. Or make a film with a very low budget and make enough earned profit to make another film. Paranormal Activity is a great example of the second option. They kept their budget low, very low, and then just created a story out of that. Now that we're understanding budget, let's take a look at the story and how it was crafted. Once Oren Pelli, Paranormal Activity's writer-director, decided on what kind of budget he would work with, he filmed the entire thing out of his own house. He crafted a very clever storyline that had his main character, Mika, buy a camera. The film starts off very home video. You are right away being whisked into this world where you are forgiving low quality picture in the frame, because the story is saying that this main character just bought a camera. It's just for the purpose of surveillance. What this did is it allowed him to keep the setting in his house, which then he didn't have to pay costs for renting a place or getting special permission. He has the freedom within his own house to do what he wants. And also with this, the camera that we're watching this film through now becoming itself its own set piece within the film, the cinematography doesn't have to be professional. Now you can save money on locations and cinematography, which really are the biggest costs that you could have. Another really successful tactic that Oren used was the power of suggestion.
I just had a nightmare. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Oh.
You okay?
Yeah.
You sure?
I had.
This has been a timeless superpower for filmmakers since cinema began. Shoot, maybe even since the inception of telling stories. Nothing is more powerful than the theater of one's own mind. And in this film, the monster is never seen. This builds a horrifying picture in the audience's imagination of what that monster could be. But it also sparks a curiosity in the viewer that makes them keep watching until the very end of the film. And this is smart in keeping to the budget, because instead of having to spend thousands of dollars on creating a monster to show on screen, instead they can craft a clever story, and it is possible your antagonist can be an unseen, a suggested reality. However, to really pull off a film like this that utilizes the power of suggestion, the cinematography has to be effective at building the story visually. And this film is. It does a great job at this. One of the pillars of any film is the perspective. From what perspective is the film going to be seen? It can dictate a lot about the film, from angles, camera rigs, where to place the camera, lighting, setting, composition. Is it daytime, night, more dramatic? Those kind of things are all dictated by the perspective, or from what perspective we're viewing the situation. In this case, the film is being shown through the perspective of Mika, the boyfriend. The film starts with him turning on his brand new camera that he just bought, and for the purposes of investigating seemingly paranormal activity happening around the house. Technically speaking, this meant that resources didn't have to be spent on big major setups. It was built into the story in such a way that the audience didn't care about any of that. We were here to watch Mika and Katie progress through this situation. Really, it was more about that curiosity and that empathy with them, which goes to prove that story is king. It's not about your rig necessarily, or lighting, or location. Those are all tools to help you craft the story. But one of the main factors in doing that is knowing the answer to that question: from what perspective are you telling your film? One particular example, it's a dialogue scene between Katie and the specialist. So Mika and Katie, the film's main characters, have this meeting with this specialist who is going to talk to them about what's going on. In the very beginning of the scene, Mika decides, I'm going to capture this on camera, so I'm going to stay behind the camera. So the audience then literally becomes one with Mika watching this scene unfold. As the audience becomes one with Mika, literally from that vantage point, the audience is going to receive information from Katie that is horrifying. We find out the root cause of all of this darkness is because of her. This revelation itself, from the perspective of the way it's shot, really pulls on our heartstrings watching it, because we've empathized with both of them, and now this news is really a blow to Mika and the audience.
What a rude.
Do you think you could try not to be completely rude to him?
And for this last point, within the how is the talent, the actors.
So, first of all, let me ask you a little bit about yourselves. How long have you guys been together? 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. About 3 years. How did you meet?
The director sought out actors tirelessly. He sacrificed lots of things because of his low budget. Having strong performers was essential, but it couldn't be strong actors like, that are also stars, because there was also an effect that this film was marketing, and that was that this film was a found footage film, that what you were watching was real. These people really went through this. Now let's get into the why. While a film's success is dependent upon the technical aspects, I believe a successful story, a good story, is accomplished when the story can really reach that mysterious part of the human soul, that part that is unseen and maybe not even really talked about too much. That part of us that yearns for more. I believe that we all have that in us. It's really a supernatural state of being. And horror films, in particular, make us more aware of that state of being. What if something does exist beyond what we see in our everyday life? Therefore, storytellers, and in this case, filmmakers, have to not only deal with the reality of stories, but also how stories are made real by the audience. And I think films like Paranormal Activity are so successful because they achieve something that we're all really innately looking for and searching for. I believe all of us are searching for something that we know is real, something that is beyond us. You see, these films, when they're made, they really make us question what is real, and if there really is a possibility of life after death, or some sort of supernatural existence that goes beyond my understanding. And even to this point, the film's idea came from this genuine place of questioning what is real, or wondering if there really is something more than what we see.
So I thought of the idea of setting up a video camera, and then I thought, how scary would it be if someone filmed themselves while they were asleep and then reviewed the footage and saw that something was going on that they weren't even aware of.
And it truly is a part of our heart that asks the what if. What if the unseen realm is real? And although Oren's film is dark, tragic, and let's be real, downright demonic, the way that this film challenges our fundamental beliefs about what could be real brings us face to face with that possibility of overcoming the grave, which gives a lot of hope. Even though maybe they consciously don't realize it, this supernatural realm exists. And if it can be proven that it exists, even if it's dark, what else is there? Is there something that is a good reality in the supernatural realm? And I think that's the hope that give people this desire for things, desire for stories, desire for even horror stories. It's this curiosity, this desire for something more than what we can see. If these dark, unseen figures can exist, what else is there? It's a real hope, a real chance at hope. And what fascinates me, especially about horror films, is that whenever you watch a horror film, it never argues that there is a supernatural realm, a good and evil. It always just assumes that there is a good and an evil. And really what films like this do is spark a curiosity to research these things. At least it did for me. There are real hauntings out there, true accounts. But if these are true, what of all the miracles? So these kind of films open the door to the possibility of that, to the exploration of that. And therefore that can lead to a place of hope, of true hope, that this life is not the end, that death is not it, that there is something that goes beyond. And I think that is something more real than we can imagine. And I think that reality is what we all search for. And we search for it in what we watch, in what we listen to, the stories we tell, and especially these kind of films spark a very special place in our heart. And when we follow that, can lead to the realization that maybe our lives are more meaningful than we realize. Even Stanley Kubrick said on the set of The Shining,
he said, "Stephen, Stanley Kubrick here. Don't you agree that all stories of ghosts are fundamentally optimistic?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, if there are ghosts, it means we survive death, and that's fundamentally an optimistic view, isn't it?"
Of course, it's optimistic, but I think it's not only optimistic, but it's hopeful. It takes us to a whole new level of meaning and value. Paranormal Activity is a film that portrays the supernatural realm in a realistic way and also opens the mind to consider eternal things. And since these are deep philosophical matters, the filmmaker's choice to blur the line between fact and fiction is fitting. It's a very personal film. I mean, even the whole setting of the movie is set in the most vulnerable of places, in the bedroom of our house, at night while we sleep. The film's found footage portrayal brings the audience to an unsurpassed level of realism and hits with a message that challenges any disbelief in paranormal activity.